What's up guys, Bionic here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we are talking about obviously the fusion, more precisely the fusion plan. I laid it all out for you guys so that you can complete this for as little effort as possible, assuming that you are somewhat prepared and assuming that you actually want this champion, but you might settle for some of the epics. Anyhow, let's quickly go over the plan, compare with the older fusions to see what we could expect from the milestones. All that said, let's get right to it. So let's first start with a quick snapshot of my account so that you guys can understand how well prepared I was walking into this. Even if this is not a fusion that you really want, being prepared for any fusion is always the way to go. For example, the energy that you can hoard in your inbox. I know I've said this multiple times before, but in case some of you guys have not heard this, any kind of energy that you do not grab from events or tournaments, it will go to your inbox for 6 days. Once it's past the 48 hours or so that it's just sitting there for you to grab it. All right, so this is a great way to kind of like extend your energy to later days. So I've been doing this. You can also do this with the energy that's coming from the shop, the sort of like daily goodies that they give us. It will go here for 99 days. So again, very easy to save all that energy. Then there's of course the potions, because this is a classic fusion, which means you're gonna have to ascend a lot of rare champions, epic champions, and so on. I don't really farm potions anymore because I'm doing the Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare Clan boss every day. Therefore, I get more than enough. However, every once in a while, I will need to farm these smaller potions because these I can run out of. I don't get them from the clan boss, but for this time around, as you guys all see on the plan, I have plenty. Then of course there is, you know, chickens, which I also hoard in here quite a bit. This is always plan B. I know I do get some with the content creator perks, but I tend to use those for like other kind of champions. Mostly what you need for fusions is the 3-star and 4 stars anyway, so I would say overall don't use them unless you really need to. Last thing to highlight real quick here is food. Obviously I always come into a fusion with a lot of food saved up. So like the previous whatever 2x ancient shard event that we've had, I've been keeping this food just there. Even though we had champion training tournaments recently, I didn't work on them. I keep my resources for fusions because it translates into a guaranteed legendary. Now on to the fusion plan with a few important things to highlight. Number one, there is no force epic champion. However, there is 2 spirit epic champions, which means that you will need more greater spirit potions. Your total amount is going to be absolutely the same, but keep this as a reference point here. Also, if you have to farm some potions, for example the spirit potions, it is only open on certain days. I know this sounds very basic, but sometimes it's easy to forget. You don't want to end up being towards the end of the fusion, realize that damn, I don't have enough, I have to pay to open it with gems, and it's going to be a very expensive fusion. Then for the summon rush, we're going to say about 1070 points for the first milestone, which is going to be for Candle Guard. And then if you want an extra copy of the epic, which is a void, in this case I'm going to say it's going to be 3500 points. So if you end up using sacred shards, that would translate to 2 sacreds and 7 sacreds. Here are 2 examples for you guys. This is Versolf. So the fragments are usually a little bit different, but if we look at Yorndig, for example, we see that the void epic was at 3000 points, but trust me, it has been at 3500 points before. Okay, and even if you do get the 3000 points, using 1 more sacred shard to get a legendary tome is usually a pretty decent deal as well. So I will say overall 7 sacreds, assuming you decide to push there. Then for the artifact enhancement events, pretty straightforward, usually around 2000 points for one of them. And then I believe we have what is it, 2600 here for another one, another rare champion, this one being the void rare. I believe this was from the Yorndig fusion. So I'm gonna say overall expect something similar. There is only 2 of them, which I guess is a great thing. Then for the dungeon divers, however, this is very different. We have 3. Usually we have 2, right? I believe for most of the previous ones it was 2. So either that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it means 1 more major milestone to have to work towards to, therefore a lot more energy. Assuming they're hard, or if they're easy, then I guess it's not the end of the world. But right now the one that we have in game is fairly hard. Okay, so I'm a little bit worried about what the last 2 are going to look like. Usually the one that's longer is the one that's more energy, so I guess I should just switch these values around. But I certainly expect one to be around 2000 to 2500 points, and then perhaps the other one, if we're lucky, is around 1500 points. Okay, we've seen that before. I think I might have an example here for you guys. Yeah, 1825 and 2500 for 2, yet now we have 1850 and 3,250. All right, so they certainly push this further up. So what does that mean for the other ones? Maybe it's going to be as low as 1,300 for one of those. We don't know. All right, but just assume the worst case scenario so that you are better prepared. Obviously, this is going to affect our total amount of energy, but I'll get back to that in a second. And finally, for the last event, champion training, we have an extra possible epic in there. When that happens, he's usually at roughly 10,000 points. So do keep that in mind if you want to get an extra copy of an epic champion. Even though there's only 2 in there, the epic is always roughly around those 10,000 points. Now, getting an extra copy of Cornelia, which I think is probably the best epic in this fusion, is not a bad thing to do. So if you want to account for this extra energy, I do have it in my total. Therefore, if you can afford to do this, then, you know, go for it. Now, as for the tournaments, we roughly know what to expect here as well, and I'm going to assume it is going to be very similar. For example, the champion chase tournament, we should have our rare champion at 150 milestone points. If you guys want to push or end up doing a little bit more, there's possibly a way for you to get one of the epic champions during this champion chase, so you might be able to fuse for a few more points. And if you do that, then you might be able to, let's say, reach the epic tome. So do keep that in mind if you want to have slightly better resources. But overall, what I'm predicting I'm going to do is the fusion of Versolf, because I do have that guy just sitting there ready to go. So that's 500 points. And then I'm going to do obviously a couple of the void shards, because it is a 2x void shard event. By the way, we're going to be doing that on stream. If you guys want to show up and let me open your void shards, it always makes for great content. And we also obviously have the gem giveaway during that time. As for the classic arena, it's been kind of always around 270, 280 points recently. I don't expect this to be a whole lot different. Fairly easy if you are in gold 4, especially easy with the current arena conditions where there's these so-called bots or really easy players. And then for the dungeons, the 4 different dungeons, the Fire Knight being the first one, 1,800 points. So all you need to take into consideration here is that there's always a relatively easy one, and then there's a slightly harder one. I guess a good rule of thumb is to assume that wherever the epic void rare champion is going to be the harder dungeon. For example, here I should just switch the values and say that the spider is probably going to be 2,000 points, whereas maybe the dragon or the ice golem is going to be at 1,500. But I think we've seen as low as 1,375 before. Okay, so here's an example of an ice golem. This was for Yorndig, so we might see that here as well. Obviously, I'm going to update this as we go along and I get the actual information. And finally, for the champion training tournament, we also have a rare in there, which last time there was only one, was at 3,725 points. So that's sort of what I left here. It might be lower. We have seen lower before, but there's only one milestone in here, so I'm going to update this eventually. So again, keep coming back so that you have the complete picture, right? So overall, when we look at the total amount of energy that I'm predicting you would need for this is about 22,000. But don't forget that that includes pushing for Cornelia, which I think is a good champion to have an extra copy of. If you decide not to push for here, you can probably knock off a whole lot of energy. Obviously, the energy from the dungeons is kind of included in the Dungeon Divers events, right? So again, it might be different from one player to the next. If let's say you are not doing stage 20 but you're only doing stage 16, you will require more energy because you get less points in the dungeons and the Dungeon Divers event, the tournaments, the whole thing, per energy spent, right? So overall, stick to stage 20 if you can, unless you have a lot of extra energy to burn, or if you just don't care, you want to spend some gems. Your basically best gear is still probably stage 24, and if there is a clan versus clan tournament, it is best to do stage 25, but you guys know all of this by now. Anyway, so as for the total amount of shards that I predict I will be needing is, if I stick to the basic stuff, I don't care about Tolf, I would use about 2 sacred shards here because it's better for the summon rush than it is for a champion chase. I would fuse Versolf, I would do about 15 void shards, mystery shards as food, usually around 250. And then for the potions, 528, that's the total you see up there. For the brews, I always say about 250, give or take. As for the rank 5 and 4 chickens, I barely ever touch the rank 5. I did last time use a few rank 4, but I really tried not to use any. Rank 3, I didn't use any. And then for the gems, I say on average for you guys should be about 250 gems, give or take, depending on how well prepared you are. And final thing to highlight here is the daily breakdown. So obviously on certain days, you're gonna, you know, focus on certain things. So do keep that in mind. For example, today, Dungeon Divers and Fire Knight, it's pretty easy. You know, you're doing the Fire Knight, you're working on both of these at the same time. Tomorrow, same thing, but on top of that, you're pulling shards and you're doing your classic arena takedown. Do try to keep your tokens from today to use tomorrow, obviously, right? Then for the other days, pretty simple. But then here's sometimes where it gets a little bit more complicated is when you start having certain days where you have champion training along with a tournament. So on a day like this, I would say push first the ice golem so that by the second day you can finish your ice golem really fast, and then you can jump on your champion training event. Try to do as much in the champion training event on this day because the Dungeon Divers is also live. So you're getting points for this, assuming you didn't complete Ashwalker. Then here, you do some food, but maybe you don't go crazy. You hold off, you hold off, you hold off, and then back to here, Dungeon Divers, where you have Spider and Champion Training Event. You go nuts here. You spend all your saved up stuff that you have to try and complete this. This is also the day the Spirit Keep is open, so be careful if you need to spend some energy there, and so on and so on. Okay, so there are a few days like this where a lot of things line up. Just try to do the most important thing first, and obviously I'll keep updating you guys. Finally, down here, I do somewhat predict when you guys are going to get one of each of the rares, and then when you'd be able to fuse one of the epics. I think there's possibly an opportunity to fuse one of the epic during the champion chase, okay, right on the last day. And then for the other ones, they're just going to be a little bit later, with the last one obviously being towards the end. This is not a fusion that you can save for later, so the second you have all 4 epics, go ahead and fuse it, right? And then that's it. So overall, that's what I have for you guys today. What I really want to know is, are you going to go for this champion? I know Conelliia is good, but you can get an extra copy. Tolf, we said, is not that great. I did try this guy, Magnar, on the test server, okay, with like savage gear, crit damage gear, just to see how hard he could hit. Decent multipliers. The guy can hit, but I don't really need him for my faction crit. I don't see myself using this guy anywhere else, so I wouldn't really keep this guy over Mother CYBELE because it is a legendary after all, and you never know when they might buff this champion or release a champion that has a good synergy. Tolf, like I said, I'm not going to get an extra copy. Don't need him for the crypt. Jerogen here, Shadowkin, I have other champions. I'm not overly impressed by his kit. I didn't really try him out, but wouldn't really be worth it. And then Conelliia, do get an extra copy if you can. I hear she's somewhat broken, but they should eventually fix her. So if you can, you know, try and add that to your roster. I'm pretty sure it's going to help for a couple things. So overall, guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later.